Happy Mother's Day, y'all. This is The World According to Jen and Carolyn. Hey, Carolyn.
Hey, Jen.
It's a lot coordinating both the video and the audio, isn't it?
God, and I'm about to make an awful sound. Are you ready?
Oh, no. That's just the sound of refreshment. Liquid refreshment in the form of Kirkland Signature's vodka soda in a can. No, Kirkland Signature doesn't sponsor us, but we hope to God someday they do because we love all things Costco.
Yes.
Look, we just wrote a commercial for you, Costco.
See? And we do love you because you're a union and you have great products
they're not
from international.
Union, but they do a good job. Yes. Oh, yeah. They did recently, I think, agree to unionize.
They agreed to something to not.
Right. They're almost there. They're almost a perfect company. Costco, you've got my heart. Just don't shit on the union. So anyway, we're kind of here to talk about that.
Yeah.
We're here actually to talk about taxing the rich and wealth inequality and policy solutions. So we hear a lot of this from people like Bernie Sanders, whom we love. And we are going to tackle what we think is the most urgent and controversial topic in American politics, whether or not we should tax the rich. So, you know, there are...
Aren't we all supposed to pay taxes? Like, am I just stupid?
Yes. So on an individual basis, these motherfuckers do pay taxes. But from a corporate perspective, a lot of these corporations pay next to no taxes.
Like churches and nonprofits.
Well,
but
yeah,
it's different because they're not contributing anything.
They're exploiting loopholes in the system that allow them to not evade taxes, but avoid paying taxes that they should be paying that correspond with the record-breaking profits that they're making, the windfall profits, if you will. So, you know, from record-breaking billionaire wealth to working families living paycheck to paycheck. We want to talk about America's wealth gap that has never been wider, you guys. It just keeps getting wider. What do we do about it? What does it mean, really, when we say tax the rich in policy terms? Is it just a rallying cry or is it a real solution?
I can't wait to find out.
I know.
I, for one.
Carolyn, you totally helped write the episode, so you should fucking know. Plus, Carolyn and I are always talking about taxing the rich. We are absolutely on this page, banging this drum, fill in the cliche. So, Carolyn, pop quiz. How many billionaires reside in the Bay Area where we're at?
I'm not sure, but I can definitely tell you I've nannied for some of them.
Yeah, possibly. I'm talking about like the 1%. They are here. They are here in abundance. So the San Francisco Bay Area is home to a significant number of billionaires. Forbes actually lists 116 billionaires residing in the Bay Area. 116, dude. Le Monde I'm assuming this is .fr is probably France. I'm not that dumb of an American. Reports that the peninsula between San Francisco and San Jose, Silicon Valley, has 56 billionaires, bro.
That's crazy.
The San Francisco Standard notes that 21 of the world's wealthiest people actually reside here in the Bay Area, excluding Elon Musk.
Well, he left.
So
he can't come back.
He can't. We don't want him back. Just go away, bro.
Stay in
he
Texas.
Shit on us. We don't want him anymore. Every time I walk by the old Twitter building, all I can think is, oh my God, for a while, you were at least in and out of here a couple of times. And I hope you hated it because we hate you. So Henley and Partners indicates that the Bay Area has 82 billionaires, exceeding New York City. We have more billionaires in New York City.
That's weird.
Isn't that crazy?
That's interesting.
No, we are the new, but because we have Silicon Valley. And tech is everything. Like New York is old money.
Yes.
San Francisco, the tech money, that is all a relatively new phenomenon.
And tech bro money.
Tech bro money.
Is another new phenomenon.
Yes. I wonder how many of these billionaires are under the age of 40.
I would think quite a lot of them.
Maybe. I'd love to dig into that because a lot of these folks have been in tech since its inception.
I know. I always forget, like, from 2000s to 2010, like, kind of were a blur.
Yeah.
For a lot of reasons.
Well, we were also really young and not focused on, generating billions, millions and billions of dollars. Though I know and dated somebody who was in this sector. was brilliant, like literally brilliant. Also like narcissistic personality disorder. I don't have the ability to diagnose, but I'm thinking he had the characteristics, man. Motherfucker could solve a Rubik's Cube in 30 seconds. It was the craziest thing ever. But he now is a millionaire from tech. And
he's poor.
Yeah.
You're only a millionaire.
I know.
Poor.
I know. You don't fit in. But he might be a billionaire now. I'm not sure. Based on who he works for. But
how much money $1 billion is?
Dude, you don't need that much money. See, I think that's the thing. It's like other countries that have caps on salary caps, like how much you can actually make. I know it flies in the face of what we think is America, but when you think about it, it's like, dude, who needs billions of dollars?
No,
who needs that?
I don't know. And I also, anyway,
I'm all about the billionaires who are like, I ain't leaving this shit to my kids. They gotta fend for themselves. I'm like, whoa, that's fucking hardcore.
Well, and people get so funny. Sex and money, man. Like money more than anything.
Yeah.
It's like far be it for me to tell anyone how to spend their money.
Right.
But I think we're going to talk about sort of what's the difference between that cognitive dissonance and that reasoning and what we're talking about.
And also, like, I am the first person to say that money does actually solve a lot of problems.
Absolutely.
Having grown up very poor, and a lot of the very anxiety-inducing situations that I was in, especially in my late teens, early 20s when I was on my own for the first time, like, holy shit, money could have fixed so many of those issues.
Yes, exactly.
I might not be on Lexapro today, but anyway, that ain't my story. So let's talk about this wealth gap in America. Okay. Facts. As of 2023, the top 1% of Americans held over 32% of the nation's wealth, while the bottom 50%, they own just 2.6.
So that's such a big difference.
That is a massive difference. And the chasm just keeps getting wider, right? So this is according to the Federal Reserve, y'all. Like, I don't think we have any naysayers who listen, but, anytime you debate with a serious right-winger conservative Trumper, they're like, that's what they want you to think. And, those are left-wing news outlets. I'm like, bro, it's the Federal Reserve. Like, they don't have an axe to grind. Like, they don't have a political perspective. They're reporting data, statistics. That's it. So, and during COVID-19, billionaire wealth surged by $2 trillion in the U.S. alone. And we talked a bit about that in terms of a lot of these folks, I'm sure, own companies, and they exploited people during COVID. It's like, okay, I get there are supply chain issues, but you tripled the amount that it would take to absorb the 1% or the one time more that your costs have gone up.
Well, that's the grossness about it.
Well, yeah, it's disgusting and it's greedy, and that's what's happening.
Thank you.
There's no checks and balances on this shit.
Right.
And that's the problem. There are very few checks and balances. So we're not just dealing with inequality, we're dealing with a system that's rigged to perpetuate it. That's the problem right there. Wealth isn't just income, it's property, stocks, investment, things that appreciate while wages stagnate. And let me tell you, wages have not kept pace with inflation. So U.S. billionaires saw their total wealth rise from $2.95 trillion in March of 2020 to over $5.2 trillion by April of 2023. That's an 80% increase.
That's a lot.
During the pandemic.
That's a lot considering what was going on.
You are making money off the backs of people who are losing their jobs, who are being exploited,
and are dependent
on the
work.
front lines. Yes, exactly. So this is from the Institute for Policy Studies and Americans for Tax Fairness. So the U.S. had approximately 750 billionaires as of 2024. That's more than any other country in the world, bro. This is from Forbes.
America!
Yeah. Dude, look how awesome we are. Not only do we have more billionaires than anybody else, we have more
hungry people.
Yes. More low-income people than we should absolutely have, given the GDP that we have, given how wealthy this country is.
They're just not working hard enough, Jennifer.
That's it. Yes, that's it. Yeah, these people.
Joking.
Oh, I know. That's exact. But that's, I think that's what people, tell themselves because they don't want to face the reality that no, the system is exacerbating all this inequality or creating inequality in the first place. So according to a 2021 ProPublica investigation, many billionaires, including Papa Bezos and Elon Musk, they paid zero federal income tax in some years. This is their companies.
See, that's the weird part I'm very excited to learn about. Because that just doesn't seem fair.
I don't think it's them as individuals. I think it's their corporate entities. Because as individuals, they have to pay taxes. Granted, there they're allowed to exploit a lot of fucking loopholes because the tax code is written for the wealthy and not like people like you and I. So the true tax rate for the wealthiest 25 Americans between 2024 and 2018 was just 3.4% compared to a 13% tax rate paid by the average worker. This is from ProPublica, an article entitled The Secret IRS Files. Yes. The top 10% of Americans own 89% of all stocks, 80% of non-retirement financial assets. The bottom 50% of Americans are primarily dependent on wages, not capital, and have minimal access to appreciating assets like real estate and stock. That is not accessible to most of us. So high wealth inequality is linked to lower economic mobility, higher political influence by elites, worse public health and education outcomes, erosion of trust in democratic institutions. Economist Thomas Piketty warns in Capital in the 21st Century that the unchecked inequality can lead to patrimonial capitalism, where inherited wealth dominates opportunity.
I talk about him a lot in my section too.
Do you really?
It's a cool book.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to read it.
Yeah, I'd never heard of it before, but this is so, we've never seen anything like this before.
No, we haven't.
So we're criticizing it from a standpoint of observing it, but also saying like, hey, we've never been here before. This is kind of uncharted territory. Yeah. What are we going to do?
Yeah. And I know that there are a lot of people out here who are like, this generation, they're lazy. They don't want to work. It's like, no, dude, they can't afford to leave their parents' homes. They go to college, they come home, they go right back to their parents' homes because they can't even afford to rent a fucking apartment. That's how bad it is. Fuck buying a home. Renting an apartment, especially here in the Bay Area, isn't even a possibility for these young people. It is really bad, y'all. Yeah. It's really bad. So and we're going to talk about it right here. From 1979 to 2020, worker productivity rose by 61.8%, but hourly pay rose only by 17.5% adjusted for inflation.
That's fucked up.
Meanwhile, how much do you think CEO pay increased?
A lot.
By 1,322% between 1978 to 2020. Bullshit. Let's talk about race, because we always like to talk about race because it is very important. Yes, the median white household had a net worth of $188,200 in 2019. Black household, $24,100. Latino households, $36,100. That means white households have roughly 7.8 times more wealth than black households.
That's not a good...
It's crazy. I see it in my family. Well, my husband's family, right? The only reason we have a house is because his dad was always able to live at home in San Francisco, and the house live in, actually. Yeah. You know, he was able to save his money, buy an investment property, build another property with his dad, and then the house that I live in now, my father-in-law helped my brother-in-law and my husband buy this house.
Yeah.
That's all. This is a testament to the stagnation of wages.
Right.
He was the only worker in the house. My mother-in-law stayed home. He was a plumber. He made great money, but he was still working fucking class. Yeah. He worked at the water department. And granted, that privilege that came from being always in the home that he grew up in and not having to pay a mortgage allowed him to help us. And that's the generational wealth piece.
Right.
I don't know where we'd be otherwise. We'd be in like fucking Livermore.
My parents probably, but that's the thing. You used to say
Livermore.
Livermore's cool. Don't fuck with people from Their wine there is apparently
they do
amazing.
Have really good wine. I'm not trying to shit on Livermore,
but no, I mean that's the thing. It's like there is no shitty real estate anymore. Even if you think about it,
not in California.
Well, my parents moved here in the 60s,
right,
and they couldn't afford their house, which was $30,000 in the sunset.
Wow.
So my father's parents helped them with the money for that.
Yeah.
But they, so it's these things where it's like, I've never been able to save.
Yes. And then they owed his parents, not the bank.
Exactly.
And there's more flexibility there, typically. It depends on the parents, right? But there's ordinarily more flexibility.
Yeah. But no,
we don't even own this house.
Savings isn't a concept.
No. Savings isn't a possibility for a lot of people. Like the advice that's given to young people these days, well, why don't you just save your money? Stop spending it on, avocado toast was like 10 years ago. But well, that's the thing.
Yeah.
It's like there's no money to save. Right. It was like when when I was on my own for the first time and making barely enough to keep a roof over my head, and there were nights where I didn't eat, and people are like, you just have to do a better job of saving. I'm like, save what, bitch? That ain't a realistic concept in my world. I'm paycheck to paycheck. Yeah. And if anything goes wrong, like my busted ass car breaks down, which I needed to get from school to work,
you're fucked.
You're fucked.
Yep.
It is the most stress-inducing experience. And fortunately, I had bosses at my first job where they're like, we'll loan you money if you need it. It was really sweet. But it was kind of a toxic place to work, but small family business. Anyway, so let's talk about something that's often whispered, sometimes shouted, but rarely unpacked in full. The American economic system is actually rigged. It's not broken. It's not malfunctioning. It's working exactly the way it was intended to work, keeping the wealthy at the top and the rest of us at the bottom. It's not a conspiracy, dude. It's the actual structure of the system, and it's working exactly as it's intended. Like whenever anybody says the system is broken about any sort of inequitable system, pick one, like education, justice, whatever. I'm like, no, bro, this is exactly how it was designed to work, because it's created to ensure that white supremacy endures and that wealthy white people are able to keep their money while the rest of us are in economic shackles. So consider how the rich make their money. It's not through hourly wages or salaries like most of us. Right. It's through assets. Again, it's the stock, real estate, businesses, and the tax code. It fucking loves assets.
Loves assets.
It loves assets.
I love assets.
I love assets too. They love assets. So capital gains, money earned from selling stocks or property, they're taxed at a lower rate than your paycheck.
Jeez.
Bro.
That doesn't seem fair.
It's not fair. The wealthier you are, the more your income comes from these capital gains. In fact, many billionaires pay a lower effective tax rate than teachers or nurses, bro.
That's wrong.
Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk paid zero federal income tax in some years, according to ProPublica. That is fucking categorically unfair. Loopholes and legal evasion. Let's talk about that. I touched on it briefly. The loopholes, trust funds, offshore accounts, shell companies. These aren't accidents. They're legal tools built into the fucking system, dude. If you're wealthy, you can afford armies of accountants and lawyers to help you pay less or nothing at all. And there are billionaires who are out there saying the same thing. Yeah. Look at Warren Buffett. He has been beating this drum forever. He is like, I will gladly pay my fair share, and it isn't fair that my secretary pays more than I do in taxes. Like, that's fucking insane. Maybe not personal taxes, but from a business perspective, yes.
H&R Block isn't hooking us up the same way, I'm guessing, is it?
Those people aren't going to H&R Block. They have like the craziest Fifth Avenue, New York, like tax accountants on their side.
It's like how the mafia has attorneys.
Yes,
they'll figure out a way to make it unconstitutional. Yeah.
Better call Saul, bitch. So intergenerational wealth and power. This is a thing too. Let's not forget about inheritance. I'm not fucking against inheritance, bro. I will have something to leave my child, but what I'm going to leave my child is far smaller than what Jeff Bezos, does he even have children, is going to leave his children or his wife or whatever. I don't know. So, the richest families pass down millions, sometimes billions, tax-free through trusts and estate planning tricks. That means inequality isn't just preserved, it's compounded over generations. So this is how a family like the Waltons, heirs to Walmart, we all know their name, can be worth over $200 billion combined, while their own workers rely on food stamps, bro.
It's like Scrooge.
When Walmart workers during the holidays are putting, you know how at our jobs they'll put out food bins to collect for the needy? They're putting out food bins in the fucking break room for your fellow employees at Walmart. Jeez. Yeah, this happened a few years ago. Yeah. It looked so bad on Walmart, they immediately got rid of it. And I'm like, well, who's going to help these families out? God damn it. And let's not forget, too, Republicans love to beat all these people on welfare. They're lazy. A huge percentage of the people who are getting public benefits maybe the majority, I haven't looked at the statistics in a while, they're fucking working full time. They're working at places like Walmart, and they still need additional support.
Well, it's like people saying immigrants don't pay taxes, and that's just categorically not true.
They pay billions of dollars in taxes.
In fact, them not being allowed to do, or not being able to do that, is going to cripple our economy.
Yep. That combined with all the bullshit that Trump's doing, we are going to end up in a recession. Mark my words. It's not my words, because I'm not that smart. These are like the smartest economists in the world who are like, we're on the path to recession. Let's skip toward that shit. Okay. So the cost of inequality, let's talk about that. So all of this isn't just unfair. It's fucking corrosive, bro. It's eating away at the idea that hard work leads to success. That meritocracy ideal, it's bullshit. It's just concentrating economic power in the hands of the few who use that power to lobby, influence policy. They shape the rules in their favor. Oligarchy.
Older white men or younger white men?
For the most part, yes. That is what we are seeing.
Like, I'd be really how would this look so different if it was elderly women of color?
I mean, I don't know, but the system's never worked to their advantage to where
this system, indigenous systems did.
Yeah. I mean, they were matriarchal systems, but they didn't rely on this kind of stuff. I'm not here to romanticize cultures I don't know a lot about, but you know, this is the Constitution. My understanding, the Bill of Rights originally was not the pursuit of, what was it? Life, liberty, and the pursuit of property.
Right.
Was the original wording.
Oh, really?
Life, liberty, and the pursuit of property. And they changed it to happiness.
Yeah. But you can't buy happiness, Jen.
You can't. And that's...
Well...
it's on it. Well, I mean, I beg to differ.
I've felt extremely happy opening things, but I got them on sale. Damn it.
Well, just money in general, knowing that, like, okay, I'm middle class now, not wealthy by any extent of the definition, but I know when I have a problem, as long as it's not a massive problem, like, God forbid, either myself or my husband or my child get some sort of catastrophic illness, we're fucked.
Yeah.
But, like, day-to-day problems, I'm like, let's throw a little money at that. Oh, my car, something's wrong with my car. We have the money to be able to fix that. Took a long time to get there.
I was going to say that,
Took a really long time to get there. And still, for the amount that I've worked and the amount of education that I have, the amount that I make, but also I chose a profession. I'm not in it for the wealth. Nobody goes into civil service to become wealthy unless you're, corrupt. Like, that's not why I'm here. So I'm happy. I can take care of what I need to take care of. That is sufficient for me. I can occasionally go on a vacation. That's awesome. Yeah. So, Carolyn, I have a question. How do people reconcile beliefs in capitalism and meritocracy with evidence of systemic economic injustice?
It's a beautifully worded question, Jen.
I try. I really do. I write for a living.
So, again, I'm going to tie in some of the things you just talked about, specifically the meritocracy. But as a polyvagal humanistic clinician, I want to add something crucial, because these beliefs that you've been talking about, they're not just, things like this can. Yeah. This can had to become a thought. Someone had to dream this idea up. Sure. And that's part of these beliefs live in our bodies, not just our minds. And white bodies, and we've talked about this specifically about the makeup of these billionaires and trillionaires, white bodies often carry layers of supremacy as embodied safety and entitlement. That's everything you've just spent the last, however long talking about. And our nervous system's expectation of access and opportunity. I think that's another piece of this too, is you can't have this vast amounts of wealth without also combining it with this belief system that people need all the things that we need. Yeah. I'm going to bring a little bit of that minimalism into this.
Well, I mean, the way that we're marketed to on a daily basis,
I'm not talking about medical care and education. There's certain things that are just standards, and we don't even have that. Yeah. So, but then you're also fed this very capitalist, like stuff, status, where you go, who you are, what brand, all of this stuff. And it's, so I will just say that because I that's me. All right. So when evidence of injustice challenges our belief systems that we're holding in our body, our nervous system reacts. So denial is actually part of a dorsal vagal response. It's going to put you in fight or flight.
Okay.
That's why people get very, very shut down or very angry or just completely, you could say kind of catatonic in their response. And reformism you need activation to be able to do reform.
Okay.
This is sort of trying to fix without feeling is not going to happen.
Okay.
You have to be able to feel this stuff and have some empathy and have some drive, which apparently only liberals and only Republicans, only liberals and progressives have, and maybe some Democrats. All right. So true reconciliation requires staying in this really safe, connected, good state of being. And you have to be present and connected. And a lot of our white bodies, that sense of meritocracy, it's built on generations of accumulated advantage, and that's seen as the norm.
Well, that's why they hate DEI.
Yes.
They're like, oh my God, they're going to realize we're not as good as we are and that we didn't fucking actually earn it. Oh, it's like Bill Burr when he talks about in his podcast about how everybody talks about how Babe Ruth is the greatest baseball player. It's like Babe Ruth didn't compete against anybody of color.
Yeah.
He was the greatest white baseball
dude. Yeah.
But yeah.
At that time, which again, it's cool for what it is, but we're not sports people. We don't fucking know.
That's my sports, the extent of my sports analogies, folks.
But, you've spent a lot of time saying this idea that like you work hard, you play by the rules, you succeed. I was raised with that mindset too. All right. But that meritocracy where talent and effort determines outcomes combined with capitalism's promise of opportunity is a very powerful narrative that we all internalize, whether you share in that power or you fail in that power.
Okay.
You're still going to internalize it, even if you don't buy into that system. And here's the reality. So Harvard economist Raj Chetty's research on children from the bottom 20% of earners only have 7.5% chance of reaching the top 20%, while those born into the top 20% have a 40% chance of staying there. So you probably realize this too. And along with your ACEs, your adverse childhood experiences, your zip code is a predictor of your economic mobility. Better than any other factor.
Social determinant of everything. Not just health and wealth.
And it's not just geography. So I think you've talked about this before, but the study, are Emily and Greg more employable than Lakeisha and Jamal?
Oh, how they'll submit the exact same resume, but prospective employers will judge on the basis of names.
Exactly.
Oh, this is in my racial equity training, y'all.
So this was a field experiment in labor and market discrimination by Bertrand and Melanathan. They found jobs with white sounding names and got 50% more callbacks than identical resumes with, quote, black sounding names. And that showed, again, why do we do that? Like, what is going on in our brains? And it's not so much our brain. I really want to enforce this idea that there's a bodied feeling going on.
Well, it's bias. It's what we've been taught, whether or not we're consciously receptive to it.
Thank you for saying the C word.
No, that's the thing. That's why the phrase unconscious bias is a fucking thing.
So, and if you're getting defensive, you're already proving our point.
Right. And if you're somebody who you're an employer and somebody goes, this is what's happening. And you go, well, I didn't mean to do that. Oh my God. Like that openness, that willingness to be like, I didn't realize I was doing that. I'm going to make an attempt to be far more aware now.
Tell me more.
Most people go defensive.
Well,
that's human nature.
That's the denial approach.
Right.
So some cite Thomas Sowell's work on cultural factors and personal choices, pointing to the successful individuals from disadvantaged backgrounds as proof that this system works. So you also have something called the reformist camp, which acknowledges problems but believes they're fixable with more capitalism. And they support Chetty's proposed interventions that basically like moving families to higher opportunity neighborhoods will enhance their upward mobility.
Yeah, that's called there was a study called Pygmalion in the classroom. This was done maybe in the 60s. I can't recall. But you put kids who weren't academically performing that high in a room of high performers, and it showed that they started to perform.
Yeah. Cool. Well, when you assume intelligence,
right,
and when you assume capability, and look at how most of our capitalist world is set up. So, others compartmentalize. We talked about this. Jennifer Hochschild determined that many Americans simultaneously believe in equal opportunity, but acknowledging the systemic barriers. We're talking about that these things are doing what they're doing. And they argue true capitalism would work properly if it was implemented in like the very true nature of what's actually going on.
Yeah.
And they talk about this a lot in Nordic countries.
Okay.
Which I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
But I feel like that's also very like one race.
It's very homogeneous. Yeah.
So
I don't think there's a lot of diversity in these countries.
So, all right. So here's something called the complexity approach. And it notes that while inequality within countries has increased, global inequality has decreased as millions in Asia have escaped poverty. This guy, Branko Milanovic's research. Here's another really good one that I found, an evolutionary view, citing Deirdre McCloskey's findings that real incomes have increased 3,000% since the 1800s.
Okay.
Something called, I cannot fucking say this, Schumpeterian progress. I like the way
how
sounds. You say that.
I don't know.
Schumpeterian progress, creative destruction of ultimately beliefs benefits society.
Schumpeterian.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, so here's Anne LaRoe's research on parenting styles acknowledges that while some systems reward, not everyone starts with the same toolkit. I love this. This support views both individual responsibility and structural reform. And then some redefine merit itself. Michael Sandel argues that we should not expand merit to include overcoming systemic barriers, but we should look at different things like gender gaps.
Oh, yeah.
And all the different systemic systems that come in no matter what we're looking at. And so critics argue that, again, all these reconciliations are inadequate.
Wait, hold on. Hold on, here it is.
Schumpeterian.
Schumpeterian.
Sounds like something I would veto at an Edwardian ball.
Schumpeterian. Yeah. Oh, it's very steampunk, bro. Please go on.
So all these reconciliations are basically inadequate. Someone named Michael Desmond's eviction research shows how one setback, and you talked about this, one setback can cascade into failure. Martin Gillians found policy outcomes aligned with wealthy preferences, not average citizens.
Yeah.
Again, that mediocrity is a myth.
Meritocracy.
Yeah. What's mediocrity?
Nothing.
Is that a make-up-a word?
Yes. Mediocrity versus meritocracy.
Isn't that what Salieri was screaming at the end of Mozart?
He was screaming a lot of shit in that movie. I fucking love that movie.
Social psychology research reveals our reconciliations often depend on system justification, which is our tendency to defend existing arrangements when they disadvantage us.
And that explains our entire political system.
Basically, it isn't just about changing policies. We're literally going to have to rewire the nervous system to be able to tolerate this discomfort.
Yeah.
And recognize how supremacy lives in our tissues.
Yep.
So DEI has to, and the company I do some work for, they call it DEIB because they're like, you have to have belonging at the basis of any DEI.
It's very psychological framing.
Yeah. So 2 chairs.
I like it. I appreciate it.
So DEIB must be embodied in our work, and we need to feel our way towards justice, not just think our way there.
Okay.
And
that makes sense.
Again, it's real work isn't just about reconciling these contradictions intellectually, but developing that capacity to kind of hold that tension and have these difficult conversations, the grief, let it transform you. Again, it's not just academic. Everything about these beliefs shapes education policy, reform, tax codes, and algorithms are going to continue to perpetuate this historical bias.
Totally.
And we need conversation. We already have the informed evidence. I feel like we have good stuff. We just need to aspire more for our society. Yes. And that's why I love Bernie Sanders and AOC, because they make me feel inspired.
Yes.
By my community.
But we already agree with their politics and their morals and their values and what you're talking about.
I wasn't raised to, though.
I wasn't necessarily either. You would think I was, but I wasn't.
Yeah.
A lot of my family was Republican, and my mom was like, I don't even know what the hell was going on there. Just a lot of mental illness. But
you can't not... something's wrong with you if you don't see these things and feel these things.
But I think you hit the nail on the head, like that denial, that this is, especially if this is how you were raised and it's deeply entrenched and associated with like your family and people that you trust and love and believe and think are right. I think that's and that's what we talk about in terms of like racial equity, like undoing racism and like learning how to be an ally and all that shit. Like it's hard work for white folks.
Well, I'd like to think, and maybe this is me being egocentric, but I'd really like to think that if I became a billionaire, my ego's so big, I would want to be known as the billionaire that gave to poor.
Totally.
And gave to help. Oh, Carolyn saved the food crisis and mental health crisis in San Francisco. Like,
yes, I would be Mackenzie Scott.
Why not use that to your ego?
I know.
I don't get it.
Yeah, I don't either.
Fuck space. Sorry, fuck space. I'm sorry. I said it.
I don't give a shit about space either. No, me neither. Yeah.
Sorry, that was loud.
That's all right. We can get loud. Fuck space. No, but we've got problems right here on Earth. Like, I'm not saying stop exploring space, but at the same time, like, we have NASA. NASA is pretty fucking remarkable. We don't need SpaceX that can't even successfully launch a rocket that doesn't fucking explode. Oh! Yeah, it's fucking awful.
Talk to me about the love of my life. Bernie Sanders has the softest hands I've ever felt.
Did you touch his hands?
Touched his hands.
When?
My friend's husband and I went to go hear him when he was in Yerba Buena, and I got to touch his hand.
When was this?
Grad school, probably like what was that? When did he run? 2016?
I don't even remember you telling me this story.
Excited.
Oh my God, I would have been too. Ugh. Okay, so let's talk about what Bernie said.
You don't want to know what I went home and did. I'm just
kidding. Oh God. I love Bernie.
Sorry, Mom.
I'm not hot for him, but
there's just something about that old Jew.
Old Jewish man sitting there all curmudgeon-y in his mittens. It just does it for me.
I'm into it.
Talk to me about the oligarchy.
See how huge things are. It's huge.
It's huge.
I'm so sorry.
We just went down a very weird path, but I'm here for it.
Cool.
All right. Senator Sanders, we love him. He's long argued that the wealth gap is a threat to democracy itself. We believe this. In 2021, he introduced what's called the 99.5% Act. It's a plan to tax extreme wealth and reduce dynastic hoarding of capital. Love it.
Hate hoarding.
Yeah, I hate hoarding. So I'm all about, fuck all hoarding. All right, so what does Bernie say? What does this act say? Estates over $3.5 million would be taxed, lowering the current exemption of $12.92 million. Dude, that's a lot of money. Oh my God. So 55% tax rate on estates valued over $50 million. Fair. 65% rate on estates worth more than $1 billion. Fair. A crackdown on trusts and loopholes used by ultra rich to avoid taxes. Bernie ain't talking about me, who's got like one small single family home in the city. Like, no, this is for the ultra wealthy. He argued that this alone could raise over $430 billion over a decade. This is from the Joint Committee on Taxation, actually. That money could fund tuition-free college, universal pre-K, housing programs, and Medicare expansion, all things that we desperately fucking need. In addition to the estate tax, Sanders has proposed an annual wealth tax, similar to plans by Elizabeth Warren, our other homegirl. It would impose a 1% tax on net worths over $32 million and escalate to 8% for billionaires. This is from the Senate Budget Committee. That's not a lot. It really isn't. In the grand scheme of things, that much money, that's not a huge imposition on these motherfuckers. So why wealth tax makes sense? So opponents argue that wealth taxes are hard to enforce and discourage investment. But in reality, countries like Norway, Spain, Switzerland, they've all implemented versions of these with mixed but learnable results. So more importantly, Bernie and progressive economists like Gabriel Zuckman and Emmanuel Saez have shown that taxing concentrated wealth doesn't just generate revenue, it reduces power imbalances that threaten democracy itself. Oh, weird. You mean like what we're seeing right now?
Literally.
Yeah, Bernie's like a soothsayer. If only we'd listen to Bernie. He doesn't need like Madame Cleo's like, the cards don't lie. any student of history can see this shit coming a mile away. Okay. The right kind of history, though. Let's not forget the richest Americans pay lower effective tax rates than working class families, largely due to capital gains, carried interest, and other tax breaks. So, why is a wealth tax on the rich fair and right? Okay, this is why we think it's fair and right. Extreme wealth is largely untaxed. Most of the ultra wealthy derive income from, as we said, capital gains, appreciation in stocks, real estate, and business ownership, not wages. These gains are not taxed until assets are sold, and many are passed on through inheritance with no tax at all, thanks to something called the step up in basis rule. Don't even know what the fuck that is, but now I do. Billionaires, again, I love that the research we did is all about shitting on Bezos and Musk, which I am 100% here for. They, again,
it's so timely.
Income tax in several recent years. There's a fairness argument here, you guys. Regular workers like us, we pay taxes on every paycheck, while billionaires can defer or avoid taxes indefinitely.
Well, it's so unfair, too, because all the fun places they get to go, they probably get comped all that shit because they probably post it on social media. Yeah. This is also why... Sorry, I'm going to say the bad thing we're not supposed to say. We need to get off social media.
That's another thing. That's not a bad thing.
But you know what I mean? Like, it's all part of this, like... I feel like back in old times, right? Like,
yeah.
Not
mean the
everyone
90s?
had a piano. You know,
Right.
If you had a piano, it was special.
Or
it was
a computer
amazing.
when we were growing up. Holy shit.
Or a television for my mom, like a radio for my dad, like all these things that like, fucking milk. My dad grew up in Wisconsin.
Oh,
so you know,
plenty of milk out there, though.
True.
Yeah.
But he was Jewish. They were lactose intolerant. It's very unfair. But it was, you know, it's like nothing special anymore either. There's just so much crap.
Well, everything is accessible, not even for low income folks, but
you don't know who's who.
Yeah.
I don't mean that sounds terrible, but you know what I mean? It's like it doesn't matter. It's just money.
And also in America, yes, we have low income people, but at the same time, our low income people their standard of living is so much higher than low income folks in like developing countries that, you know, most low income people in our country aren't picking through garbage and subsisting on next to nothing.
Right.
You know, I'm not saying that severe poverty doesn't exist here. It just looks a lot different than it does in a lot of other developing countries.
On a larger scale, for sure. Like we see that, I think, with the homeless or unhoused population, for sure. But when you're thinking about like certain nations in Africa or Asia, and the unhoused thing is primarily kind of relegated to big cities. Yes.
Like San Francisco, New York, Denver, you know, New Orleans. Like, this is where those folks typically tend to congregate because there are more resources. Understandable.
Yeah.
And out here in particular, the climate is more mild. But these people all obviously got displaced, you know, initially by Reagan, and then through just shit policy after shit policy, ended up in what was coined the psychiatric ghetto, i.e. the street, when group homes failed, which were supposed to be the solution to state-run hospitals. Anyway, we have a whole ass 2-part episode on that, y'all. Check out our episode on mental health. It is not their fault.
I don't mean that as an
Absolutely not.
excuse. That to say that is such a privileged comment to even say.
Well, to say that we are living in the most wealthy country in the world, and we're living in the Bay Area where we have more billionaires than I think anywhere else in the world, or at least anywhere else in the United States. To have people walking down Market Street where I work with no fucking shoes on, talking to themselves with like festering sores on their body, that is completely and totally unacceptable. That is a human rights crisis. We have the money to be able to take care of that, take care of those people and help them, even if they can't contribute from a capitalist standpoint to our economy.
They have value because
they're
all
humans.
have value.
Right.
And believing that apparently is what makes you a good person.
Or a communist.
Wow.
I'm proud to be a communist. So, oh, God, we just went down a road. So, anyway, we should be taxing these motherfuckers.
Yeah.
You know, the rich have benefited disproportionately from public systems. There's this great book I love. It's called The Myth of the Self-Made Man. And it talks about how people like Donald Trump were like, I did this on my own, whatever. It's like, okay, we all know what you got and where you came from. That's bullshit. But, you know, the wealthy have built their fortunes on public infrastructure, their education, technology like the internet, legal systems, monetary policy like bailouts and interest rate policy that benefits them. That's public policy and infrastructure. The 2008 bailout of the 2020-2021 pandemic response disproportionately benefited large asset holders through rising stock prices and asset inflation. Again, just go back to the beginning of this episode where we talk about how much billionaires made during the pandemic, a time that was really difficult for a lot of us. They were making windfall fucking profits. So, you know, there's an equity argument. If the wealthy gain more from the system, they should contribute more to sustain it. I 100% believe that. Wealth tax revenue could fund broad social good. This is where Sanders says proposed wealth tax could raise $4.35 trillion over 10 years from the top 0.1%.
Wow.
You know, we can fund tuition-free public college, like all the cool stuff, the green energy jobs that, you know, we should be moving toward because, our planet is going to fucking explode.
Not doing so well.
So a wealth tax, it's not radical, you guys. No. It's a practical response to systemic inequity built on principles of fairness, reciprocity, and social contract. The richest Americans can't afford to contribute more, and doing so would benefit everybody.
Yeah.
And democracy itself, because we are clearly seeing what happens when you have an oligarchy in charge. Yeah. So, Carolyn, I have another question. Does rising inequality increase support for authoritarianism or populism? Populism.
I'm so excited.
So,
yeah, rising inequality does increase support for both. I'm so excited. Authoritarianism and populism, but we have...
Oh, so both.
Both.
Okay.
And we've seen this in U.S. and global history. This is a very succinct version of that. But we saw this in the 1930 global crisis, Great Depression, massive inequality and economic insecurity, post-Civil War America, the Gilded Age. 1870s to 1900s saw extreme inequality with robber barons and carpetbaggers.
Put some kids in a factory.
Amassing fortunes while workers suffered, kind of similar to the pandemic. Latin American patterns, Perón in Argentina, Vargas in Brazil, Chavez in Venezuela, post-Soviet Russia. How do you think Putin got so fucking cool? Not riding around on a horse shirtless, right?
I mean, let me eat a steak and ride this horse with no shirt on.
And meanwhile, everyone's making fun of Obama for wearing a helmet and riding his bike in tan pants. It's like, shut up.
Oh my God. Obama. He's taking care of his brain and riding a bike. God damn it. How dare you?
I know. Dare you? Anyway, so, and the 2008 financial crisis or Orban in Hungary. I'm not going to say this right. In Turkey, Erdogan.
I think that's
Erdogan.
It. Yeah.
Bolsonaro in Brazil. Brexit.
Oh, yeah.
Trump's election.
Yep.
The rise of far-right parties in Europe. Like, it's not just America. Like, we're not shitting on America. It's nothing new.
Right.
This is, you and I were talking about this. It's human nature.
Yes.
This, and we could probably even go back, but here's the pattern and tell me what you think.
Okay.
When inequality reaches certain thresholds, one, trust in democratic institutions erode. 2, people seek simple explanations and strong leaders.
Yes.
Or in our case, crazy leaders.
Yes. There's no strength there.
No. Scapegoating of minorities often follows. So I'm going to say always follows.
Totally.
And it's usually not white people.
No.
Democratic norms weaken as people prioritize economic security over political freedom. That is literally what's happening right now.
Well, the irony is economic security is fleeting.
Yes.
Like the Trump
personal freedom.
Right. No, it's all going out the window. So what are these folks trying to preserve in supporting Trump? But that's why his popularity is waning. That's why he is less popular than any other president in his first 100 days in the last 80 years.
I don't know where, I'm sure someone it can be quoted to saying this, but I heard this on a TikTok. It was someone saying that bees don't have to explain to flies why honey doesn't taste like shit. Right? Have you ever heard that?
No, but that makes a lot of sense.
And that's kind of like most progressive Democrats to anyone who's not seeing this right now. So when economic inequality grows, people's nervous systems shift into a chronic state of stress. You talked about this, making us vulnerable to authoritarian leaders who promise safety through control. Research by Yasak Monk and Ronald Englehart show that economic, and we've loaded all the show notes if you want to look these articles up. Ronald Englehart shows that economic insecurity predicts support for anti-democratic values across cultures. The pattern is clear. When people who, quote, played by the rules fall behind while elites prosper, especially after the 2020 pandemic's impact on jobs, housing, and healthcare, they become receptive to populist messages that the system is rigged. Thomas Piketty, so this is where I quoted you, the Brahmin left versus the merchant right divide, where traditional political alignments fracture as educated elites vote progressive while working class voters shift right. We saw this where we'd see bumper stickers of like, this union person voted for Trump, or these things where you're going, but why would you?
These two things don't connect.
What? And that. Okay. So from a polyvagal perspective, again, just from a nervous system, which is what polyvagal means, widespread inequality creates a collective nervous system crisis where large populations are stuck in survival states rather than the calm, engaged state needed for complex thinking. Democracy itself becomes threatened. And I think even with that thought, the amount of people who are risking their lives and who are part of these systems that are speaking out and putting literally their lives, their jobs at risk, knowing that this is what's happening to them, that's how much it matters. And that just shows you how amazing when you know you're on the side of good.
And also people who aren't questioning or don't know to question, they might not be equipped, because we have for being the wealthiest country in the world, our education system is piss fucking poor. That too is by design. It is deliberate. The people in power do not want folks to be able to think critically, because when you think critically, you start to question these inequitable dynamics, and then you start to protest.
Kind of like a cult.
Yes.
It's all similar.
Yes.
And so, again, this thinking itself, as you said, democracy also becomes threatened. And the solution isn't just economic policy. It's restoring social trust and connection. What polyvagal theory calls co-regulation. That's you and I sitting here right now feeling safe. I have no doubt that I'm safe with you. We need economic systems that also keep people in a state of conductive to collaborative problem solving, not in a survival mode. Think of how many people this is very hopeful to me, we're seeing go into office right now. And leave there was a guy who left the CIA or the FBI and is now running for office. Good. And, it's just, it's a call to action. It's not just about saying what I've said a couple times, well, that just doesn't seem fair. Well, that just doesn't seem fair. It's about, we're really at a point again in our history, we're about to preserve democracy or really watch it fall. Further. Absolutely. And unfortunately, in the last election, Democrats, not unfortunately, because it was accurate, but Democrats really depended on people stepping up at the threat of democracy eroding. And that was not a sufficient enough call to action, i.e. voting for the black lady, for a lot of people who would ordinarily and didn't cast their vote for a black woman. Again, for me, it all goes back to racism and sexism. It's huge. And at the same time, I think now I know people, because the polls tell me, are starting to realize hey, this erosion of democracy has really serious implications for me. And I trusted somebody who told me that I, as whatever, would be safe. And then you have farmers who are wait a minute, I grew food for USAID, and you're telling me that Donald Trump is no longer funding USAID, therefore the farm subsidies that I was providing to name the country in need are no longer needed?
what's going to happen to me?
It was all there, though.
It was.
It was all there.
It was.
But well, like you said, did they have that information? Did they understand that information? And I think underestimating the level of dissonance.
Yes.
And again, those patterns that are existing.
Right. Dude, I walked around Denver in 2008 stumping for Obama because Denver was purple then. I'm glad to say it's blue now, but Denver was purple. And so we really had to get out there and hustle for Obama. And I was in areas that were high poverty areas and talking to people who were like, I'm voting for John McCain. And I'm like, economically speaking, what is he going to do for you? Mm-hmm. And they couldn't answer, And I even had one woman say, she had a disabled son and she got some sort of medical benefit because of Clinton. Now, I've got my issues with Clinton, but she's like, oh, we wouldn't have this if it weren't for Clinton. And I'm like, so you're telling me that in the past, a Democrat has implemented a policy or a law that has benefited your child, possibly saved your child's life, and yet you're still not moved to vote for a Democrat. Like, I don't know if in this instance there was racism at play. I'm going to go ahead and say likely that's what was going on. But it's like, I think that these people, economically, these people being Republicans, don't have your interests at heart. Now, I have my issues with moderate Democrats and corporate Democrats, too.
I want a whole new system.
I want a whole new system as well. Yeah. I really do. So, I'll end it with this. Like, I really love Rick Wilson of the Lincoln Project. I love the Lincoln Project. If y'all don't know who the Lincoln Project is, Rick Wilson.
We should do a post on that.
We really should. We should start tagging them because I love Rick. And if I got to connect with him, I would be over the freaking moon.
Fangirl.
I forgive him for some of his previous trespasses because he was a Republican operative. He was a Republican strategist and advisor who got paid a lot of money to support and assist Republican candidates and Republican electeds. But when Trump ran initially, he was like, oh, hell no, we need to do something different. And has now been an outspoken critic of the Trump administration and the Republican Party in general. And of Democrats who aren't standing up and doing enough too. I love Rick. I love Rick. And he was saying recently, he's like, look, it's not about Democrats or Republicans anymore. Like, Democrats, you need to embrace your Republican brothers or sisters because this fight is bigger than any one party.
Yeah.
We're all going to get butt fucked.
We're fighting for our humanity.
We're fighting for our system. We're fighting for a democracy, which is the oldest democracy, I think, in the world, if I'm not mistaken. Like, these high ideals that are in the Declaration of Independence that we have yet to achieve because of systemic inequality and because of racism and because of our economic system. We need to work together if we're ever going to get even remotely close to achieving them. And yes, I understand. Like, you voted for Trump. I'm really upset at you for doing that. We're all in a shitty situation because of you. But one, admit that you fucked up.
You don't even need to admit you fucked up.
Yeah, we know.
I'll take you back.
We know. Yeah, just come over. Just come over. We're going to hang out. We're going to fight this together because ultimately, our final thought on the topic at hand, we're still on the topic, but, deviate a little bit as we tend to do. Should we tax the rich? The answer is yeah. If we care about democracy, fairness, and our collective future, it's a resounding yes, y'all.
Yeah.
We're not just debating numbers. We're deciding what kind of society we want to live in.
I believe in universal human dignity, Jen.
I really do. While I'm a human rights practitioner, that's what my degree is in. So there should be no billionaires where children go hungry in the richest country on earth. Think about that, y'all. Nobody should be going hungry in this country. And people going hungry aren't doing so because of some sort of like a moral deficit.
Yeah, no one's not working hard.
Right.
And then goes hungry.
Right. We have to take care of each other. Not only take care of each other, we have to recognize that the system that created these situations in the first place is fucking inequitable, and we have to work to change that system. Because philanthropy and giving isn't going to need to happen, at least to the extent that it does now, if we have an equitable system. So tax these motherfuckers. Anyway, that's our closing thought. keep listening.
Yes.
We have lots more communist rants to throw at you. I don't even know what our next episode is going to be on, but I guarantee you it's going to be something completely and totally left wing. That's why you listen, right? So follow us on TikTok at TwatJC. You can also follow us on YouTube, which we're trying to push people toward because we don't know what's going to happen with TikTok. We are learning.
I got Skylight. I don't really understand how to use it.
I'm on Skylight too, and Blue Sky. Like
so many.
I'm trying. We get a lot of traction on TikTok. Our community is almost 3,000 strong.
Woo!
Come visit us on YouTube, y'all. Thanks for listening. We appreciate you all. Thanks for being a part of our community.
Yay.
We love you. We're here for you. You can even send us a text, y'all. You'll see that embedded in our show notes. Send us a goddamn text.
Yeah, we're kind of bored.
Yeah, we want to hear from you. We're never bored, but you would make things more exciting. Love you all. Bye.
Bye.